Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another exciting session of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. My name's Joe Grabowski, and for those who don't know, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants is all about connecting classrooms around the world to science, adventure, and conservation. And we have a really exciting guest today. Her name's Grace Young. I'm going to introduce her a little better in a second, but if she wants to give a little wave and say hi.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, so I want to introduce our classrooms. We have some cool classrooms joining us from different spots in North America. We've got Mrs. Berg's 5th grade class, and apparently they go by the name the French Fries. There they are waving. Let me turn your mic on. Right. And then we have a group of grades 7 and 8 students joining us from Toronto, Ontario. You guys shout out.
Here you go.
All right, and joining me today, because I teach I've got the grade 6-7 class in Guelph, Ontario, but we also have a guest class joining us. Mr. O's class is joining us. Give a wave, guys.
Hi, guys.
All right. So our guest today is Grace Young. She is an avid sailor and scuba diver. She's working on her PhD at Oxford University, worked on some really cool ocean robotics projects in the past, and she was an aquanaut, which meant she lived underwater for 14 days on Mission 31. So I'm not going to give anything else away. I'm going to let Grace take over because she has a really cool presentation for you guys, and then we'll have some time to swing around for a little Q&A. So Grace, take over.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for your time today. I want to tell you about my experiences exploring the ocean, including living underwater for 2 weeks, and then talk about my work in ocean exploration and marine robotics. And then my favorite part is going to be answering your questions. I love hearing what you guys are wondering and what you think about the kind of work I do and the kind of work other ocean engineers do. So please keep some questions in mind, and I'll try to save, well, we can start questions at around 9:20, so we have at least 10 minutes. Cool. The best way to explain the living underwater is to show you pictures. So here we go. This is a photo of the habitat we live in. It's called Aquarius. It is just a little bit bigger than a yellow school bus, and it's bolted to the seafloor 60 feet deep in the Atlantic Ocean off of the coast of the Florida Keys. Here's another photo of the habitat. You can see it's just encrusted with marine life now. Amazingly, though, this is what it looked like 22 years ago. It was brand new, shiny, and yellow, and it's been on the seafloor for 22 years now. It's exactly as old as I am. It's pretty amazing for a piece of technology in the ocean to last that long. This is legendary ocean explorer Sylvia Earle inside the habitat looking out. And there's me and Fabien Cousteau, Jacques Cousteau's grandson, and our videographer from inside the habitat. You can see it feels like you're in a reverse aquarium. There's me and Fabien just having a normal meeting with coffee in the morning. It was really surreal. I say inside the habitat felt like the combination of an RV and a space station. So we had a small kitchen area and a toilet. We had bunk beds. We had a microwave and a small sink. But then one of the walls was just covered with switches and valves that controlled our health and safety inside the habitat. Now, one of the first things people ask me sometimes is how the door worked in the habitat. And this photo, if you look at it closely and think about it, explains it pretty well. You can see someone inside the habitat is putting their hand through the air-water boundary and handing a weight to the diver in the water. So the door is really just an opening in the floor of the habitat. And the reason that works is because of physics and pressure. You can think of it like a bucket turned upside down and pushed underwater. There's a pocket of air that stays trapped in the bucket that won't let water come up. So that's how it works. It's actually pretty simple. Here, this is me, believe it or not. I look like an alien or like an astronaut. I think when you're exploring the ocean, you really are in an alien environment. We are dependent on the surface for life support to give us air and other gear. We're diving these hard hats, so not normal scuba diving. They're an umbilical cord supplied air to my helmet and surrounded my head in air during the dives, and the air came either from the surface or from the habitat itself. Here's a photo from some of the training. We went through 2 weeks of really intensive training for the mission. So people ask me all the time, is like, weren't you scared or didn't you feel safe? And honestly, during our training, we went through every imaginable emergency situation. So I felt prepared to deal with, like anything I could think of, even in my sleep. I felt very safe. And we had divers from the Navy assisting us. We had people who've worked on the habitat since its very beginning. So I did feel safe, and we went through so much training. I was well prepared. This is there's another photo of the gear we were in for when we walked outside of the habitat. Here's another photo. You can see the habitat is corals and other forms of marine life. Fish swarm around it. It's just part of the reef there off the coast of the Florida Keys. And so that's what the habitat looks like. And now maybe you're wondering, like, why was I there? I was there as a team of 6 aquanauts at one time. We were filming a documentary with Fabian Cousteau about what it's like to live underwater in these days, and tying into some of the historical elements of underwater living. But then also I was there running a project with an high-speed camera. So a normal camera, like your iPhone camera, will film at 30 frames a second. And the new iPhones have a slow motion setting that films at 120 frames a second. But the camera that came out from MIT just a month before Mission 31, the camera could film at up to 18,000 frames a second. And that lets us film events that happen ultra fast and lets us film them in ultra slow motion. I'll switch back to that photo. So in this photo, the camera is inside this box that keeps it waterproof. And this in the corner is Liz, the other scientist aquanaut, and that's me looking upside down. It was, to see the camera, it was just easiest to kind of put my head upside down in the sand. And we filmed, like I said, things that were really fast. We filmed them in slow motion. So this video you have to be patient with. You can see just how the camera is filming so slowly, it almost looks like nothing is moving. Bam. So that is a mantis shrimp leaping out of its den to catch a goby prey and bringing the goby back. Pretty great. This is a yellowhead jawfish clearing out its den, spitting out sand. I think this video just looks funny. That's a lizardfish releasing itself from camouflage. And this event happened so fast that in real time, when I was looking at that on the seafloor, I really had no idea what was happening. I just saw a blip of sand. I couldn't even see the fish. It was moving so fast. Oh, and then one time we just put the camera alone on a tripod and to see what would happen. And this fish came by to say hello. Perfectly in focus. Yeah, pretty cool. And then all these videos and photos were part of an exhibit that was at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts in January that showed the slow motion photography. But interesting, the reason we brought that camera down there wasn't necessarily to film the mantis shrimp and all those. We wanted to prove a theory about Goliath grouper, which is the fish you see in this photo. It can be 200 to 300 pounds, so it's easily bigger than myself or any of the other aquanauts down there. You can see, well, that's me from the back staring at this giant fish. And there's a theory that this fish, when it feeds, it opens its mouth so fast and forcefully that it creates a vacuum inside its mouth just for an instant. And that vacuum creates a small bubble. It's called a cavitation bubble. And then when the fish, so it does that right before it feeds, and then when the bubble collapses, it creates a boom in the water. And as a diver, when the grouper is feeding, you can feel that boom in the water. You feel it in your chest. But the theory of the cavitation bubble causing that boom is unproven. We're not sure that's exactly what's happening. And it's happening so fast you wouldn't be able to see it with a normal camera. But with the high-speed camera, we could potentially see it. And we originally brought down that camera to try to film maybe that cavitation bubble happening in the grouper's mouth. And we ended up getting close enough to the grouper to film the bubble. And the fact the grouper boomed right in front of my fellow aquanaut, Liz. But I mean, the camera, like, we'd have to get it kind of inside the fish's mouth and filming just right, so it ended up not being possible, but we did film all those other videos that are in an exhibit now and that marine scientists at Northeastern are studying at. So it's still very useful, even though it's a different tool. I think a lot of projects like that in real life work out that way, so it's good to know. There's just some other photos of the Goliath grouper coming towards the window. One of our other missions when we were underwater was to do a lot of ocean outreach. Right now the oceans are pretty sick. They're in a sad state. And so we wanted to reach out to classrooms and leaders and decision makers around the world to tell them about how important the oceans are for our health. Here's a video of us and other scientists from Northeastern Skyping with, sort of like I'm doing now.
Grace, can you just reshare? I think you just need to reshare the screen again.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a photo. We're Skyping from inside the habitat, and those are the Goliath grouper by the window. This is something we saw one night out of the habitat.
Right at us. Oh, did you see that? Oh my God! Right in the window. Just look right in the window. There's the shark. Did you get it? From that, he's coming right at us. Oh, did you see that? Oh my God! Right in the window. Look right in the window. There's the shark. Did you get
it? So that was, as you can tell, that was a Goliath grouper, the 200, 300-pound fish, attacking a barracuda, and a shark just swam in the background. That was just what we saw out of the window in our bedroom one night. Pretty crazy. To show you, too, like how almost surreal it was living underwater. Here's me, like, brushing my teeth. But outside the window, there's plenty of fish swimming. I really miss that view. Now, to return to the surface, we have to get our bodies slowly used to living at surface pressure again. While we were at 60 feet, we were living at around 2 or 3 atmospheres of pressure. And to get our bodies back to surface pressure, we spent 18 hours decompressing. And during that time, the atmospheric pressure inside the habitat slowly rose back to 1 atmosphere, and we were breathing pure oxygen for part of the time. We had to wear these masks for pure oxygen that made us look really funny. We all just laid in our beds relaxing. And then when we returned, there was a big party. We had a press conference. It felt good to be back on land, but honestly, if someone said you could spend another 2 weeks there or spend a month there again, I would say yes in a heartbeat. It was absolutely incredible. And so that's about Mission 31. That was one of the most exciting things I've worked on ever, and I would go back in a heartbeat. Now, before Mission 31, and even now, I worked on marine robotics at MIT. That's what I studied in my undergrad. I worked on robots that helped count fish so that the government knows more or less like how many fish are left in the ocean so they can set better policies for regulating fisheries. I worked on robots that made 3D maps of sea ice so that we can better predict weather and the effects of climate change. And right now, I'm working on my PhD in underwater imaging. I'm looking at how the 3D structure of coral reefs changes with depth. And we're trying to answer that question using some pretty advanced imaging technology and also advanced diving. We're studying reefs up to 100 meters or 320 feet deep. So we're doing a kind of advanced diving called rebreather diving. Here's a photo of me and my 2 research mates in our rebreather gear. I think we look like machines, basically. There's a photo of me. I'm carrying 6 tanks total. I'm just surrounded by gear. But that's the kind of technology we need to get to the depths that we're studying at. Yeah, so that's my presentation. Thank you guys all for your attention. Do you guys have any questions?
Okay, so let me turn my mic back on and let's cycle through a couple of the classrooms because I'm sure there's some questions. And I hadn't seen that video you showed before of the grouper and the fish and then the shark coming in. That was awesome. That's a cool video.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, let's visit.
Imagine what must have happened.
Our 5th grade class, Mrs. Berg's class. Would you like to ask a couple questions?
Oh, sure. I certainly would. Come on up and ask. Yes, come on up and ask your question.
Hi.
If the Aquarius were to flood, what would you do?
The Aquarius, good question, and the people had to think about this when they were designing it. So the Aquarius is it's a cylinder, and it's divided into sections that each have a door between them that's watertight. So wherever the leak started, we'd close off the doors for that section of the habitat. So only one section would flood, but we could still live in other parts of the habitat. And then we'd slowly decompress in the other parts of the habitat until we could escape to the surface.
Good question. Let's snag another one from the French fries.
Okay. Come on, right here. Come on up. Okay.
Have you seen anything weird?
Anything weird?
Under the ocean? Yeah.
Yes, lots of weird things. Things that look like they should be aliens on our planet. The mantis shrimp that when I show the video of is pretty weird, I think. Normally, it's got 2 huge eyes on stalks, and when it's sticking out of its den in the sand, you can only see its 2 eyes on stalks slowly looking around. And then it doesn't leap out and with its pinchers until it's feeding on some prey. I think that is strange. There was one night, too, where we were filming for several hours, so I was just sitting on the seafloor with the camera waiting for, I think it was the mantis shrimp, to do something interesting to film. And I was so focused with Liz, and we were using bright dive lights, that I hadn't realized that day had shifted to night. And by the time we turned off the lights and we're headed back, I realized it was pitch dark, and it was a little bit spooky, and I turned on my hand light, and a nurse shark, which is this 4-foot-long shark, it would never attack a human, just grazed past my leg. That was spooky, a little bit weird, but I wasn't scared. I was more excited, actually.
Very cool. Just while you're talking about night diving for a second, did you have any bioluminescence? So if you were moving kind of in the water, did you get any of that?
Yeah, there was bioluminescence in the water. Maybe if you guys have been to a beach in the summer, a lot of times you move your hand and little like lightning bugs are lighting up in the water. We had that underwater. It's beautiful. It's very difficult to capture on film though, because the light they emit is so small.
Okay. Thanks, French fries. Great questions, and maybe we'll swing back just depending on how our time is going. But let's go about an hour from me to Toronto, and let's see if our 7 and 8s have a question or two for Grace. Let's turn your mic on.
What got you into did you say like going underwater? Like what got you interested in like sea life and things like that?
I think before my undergrad, I was interested in engineering and robotics. Like math and science were my favorite subjects, and my high school started a robotics team. So I got into that, and then very separately, I loved just sailing, scuba diving, just being on a beach. A lot of people do. I like being on the beach and being by the ocean. And then it wasn't until the second year in college I realized I could combine those two things in a field called ocean engineering. Once I found that, I was totally hooked, and I wanted to use technology to better explore the ocean. And if I was a master scuba diver when I was 15 or 16, and then the first technical, unusual kind of diving was Mission 31, my last year at MIT, and then in my PhD, I was looking for whatever excuse I could to do more technical diving, go deeper in the water, and spend longer under the ocean.
All right, good question. One more for us.
Is it true what they say about the ocean being more confusing than space?
Can you repeat the question?
He's on his way up.
Okay.
Is it true what they say about the ocean being more confusing than space?
Okay, the ocean being more. Yeah, this is something that I wrote my undergraduate thesis on. My undergrad thesis was called Missiles and Misconceptions, Why We Know More About the Dark Side of the Moon Than the Depths of the Ocean. We know more about space than we do the ocean, and some people think, oh, it's probably because it's natural for humans to want to look up and explore the stars and the heavens. But really, space and ocean exploration were on the same track up until the Cold War. In the 60s, we put men at the bottom of the ocean. We also put men on the moon. The technologies were developed really at the same pace, and almost equal amount of funding was going into both. But then during the Cold War, space exploration took on this other dimension. It was all of a sudden very important for military and geopolitical reasons. And I think because of all the funding and research efforts going into space at that time, it's the reason why space technology is so much more developed than the ocean. But I'm hoping that now, in this decade especially, where it's really, really crucial for ocean health, and we're starting to realize how important economically the ocean is to all nations, I hope we're going to see more and more effort, funding, and research effort put into ocean exploration. It's something I'm really working towards.
Okay, as a fellow diver, I second that motion 100%, and that's part of the reason that I launched this project, is just to bring more issues like this, the science and the conservation, into classrooms. So that was a great question and a great answer. Thanks, Grace. We're going to pop over to my room now, and we're going to start with, come on up. Don't be shy. Introduce yourself.
My name's Mackenzie, and I wanted to know, what were some lessons you learned from Mission 31?
Oh, thanks. Mission 31. One thing I really miss about it, and that I learned, was that our time underwater was very valuable. It's very expensive, literally, to run the habitat, but also it's a chance you'd never have otherwise. So all of our day was very carefully planned, almost half hour by half hour. And before we went to bed, we'd have a meeting with the 6 aquanauts and with our support team above, and we went over the next day, like half hour by half hour, what we needed to accomplish and what kind of support we need to get that done. And I kind of missed having that support team before bed to put the next day together. And it taught me how much important careful planning is, and how important teamwork is, and making sure everyone's on the same page in a group. Yeah, that's something I learned.
Thank you.
Great question, Mackenzie. Lucas, come on up, bud. Look at the camera, though. Yeah.
My name is Lucas, and I was wondering, what expeditions or projects do you have coming up?
Good So right now I'm working in Honduras. Right now I'm in Oxford in the UK, but I'm doing the work for my PhD in Honduras, on an island off of Honduras. It's called Utila. It takes me about 3 days to get to the island from where I am now. And we're looking at deep coral reefs, so the reefs that are 320 feet deep, diving them using rebreathers. And that next expedition, that'll start in June.
Okay, and we'll grab one more and then we'll swing back to the other two classes.
Do you think living and working underwater are the same, or be more common?
I think working are different because I could imagine having a vacation house underwater, and I'd consider that living underwater. I think it'd be really cool, and there are some underwater, semi-underwater hotels. I think we'll see. I hope we'll see more of them in the future. Working underwater, I'm also hoping will become more common right now, but it needs to be improved. Like you can make the habitats a bit more comfortable, even easier to dive on. We also need to have really clear reasons for wanting to work underwater, whether that's collecting scientific data or cataloging new species or doing construction projects. Yeah, I'm hoping it'll something we'll see more of. I think probably what else will happen is we'll be using human explorers, but also robots, and working together to accomplish really meaningful things.
Thanks, Peyton. All right, so let's take a visit of our other two classrooms, and we'll see if maybe we can grab one or two more, and then yeah, we'll wrap for the day. It's been an awesome session so far, though. So let's visit our French fries again.
Have you ever had any injuries from a fish?
Injuries from a fish. Nothing serious. I've been stung by jellyfish and fire corals, but those are usually little rashes that'll go away pretty quick. And then Liz got bit by a chub, a fish that has small teeth, and it drew a little bit of blood, but it was just a scratch. It wasn't a big deal. They usually won't come close to humans. Like, we are a lot bigger than them, and especially in scuba gear, we look terrifying, in my opinion.
Okay, go ahead and ask another one if you have one.
Okay, Taylor, come on up.
What happens? How many divers? What is the most divers that have went down in the Aquarius? Like how?
Well, we were there was a maximum of 8 of us in the habitat at a time. I'm pretty sure it was 8, because sometimes we'd have visitors come down like almost every day. Yeah, but overall, I think Aquarius usually runs missions with 6 aquanauts. They do that a few times a year, and it's been running for 22 years. So there's a multiplication there. But still, believe it or not, there have been more people that have gone into space than have lived underwater. So there's more astronauts than there are aquanauts, which is pretty crazy.
Okay, so I know there are a couple classrooms who are joining us just via the live feed who are just watching, but there is a way to participate if you do have any questions. On the left side of your screen is a blue icon should pop up. It's called the chat sidebar, or just chat. And if you put a question in that sidebar, I'll be able to see it, and we can ask that question to Grace as well. And give a little shout out too if you do send in a question, just so we know where you're watching from, because I can see we do have a few viewers who are just watching along. Back to Toronto, Ontario.
Do you have any life-threatening incidents when you were down there?
I couldn't hear the question.
When you were underwater, was there any life-threatening incidents?
I didn't hear. Maybe repeat it.
While you were underwater, was there any life-threatening incidents?
Yeah, while we were underwater, life-threatening. thankfully. But we were prepared really to deal with anything. Like even when we're wearing those hard hats, for example, that surround our head in air, the air comes from an umbilical connected to the habitat. And even if that got cut or severed or kinked, like we had a backup air supply tank on our back so that I could have switched that on immediately. We went through the drill for switching that on every time before we got into the helmet. So, I mean, even if something went wrong, we had a backup plan to deal with that. Yeah, we also did drills in case our helmet was flooded with water. So we let the helmet fill with water, and then we applied pressure into the helmet so that all the water got flushed out.
Okay, and let's see one more final question for Grace.
Okay, I have a question. You sound like an inspired learner, Grace, which is so wonderful to hear. Do you have any advice for teachers about how we can keep our kids inspired and engaged?
Yeah, this is something I've thought a lot about. I think teachers make a huge difference in students' life, and I was lucky to have some really inspiring teachers, especially my robotics coach in high school. He kind of took each of us under his wing and made sure we were learning and feeling comfortable even if we didn't win a robotics match. I don't know, and what I enjoyed most in high school and middle school was doing hands-on projects where you could be creative and there wasn't necessarily a right answer. Even in math and science, it's not always easy. But yeah, doing side projects and talking about different careers and different jobs makes a difference. It's hard though. I wish I knew some secret recipe, but you're probably closer to figuring that out than I am.
All right, that was a great question. Definitely know teachers think about that a lot. Let's grab a couple from over here in Guelph. Elijah, you want to come on up?
Hi, my name's Elijah, and I was wondering what you guys eat.
Yes. We ate very similar to astronauts, actually. We had a lot of freeze-dried food, and you just added water to it and then shook it up, and then it turned into like pasta or chicken somehow. We ate those because they were very easy to store, and we were burning estimated 300 calories a day living underwater, so we had to eat just a lot of food. One time, though, people on the surface sent down pizza for us, and one time we got a cake. It was nice.
Yeah.
So if I recall, was there a special way the food had to be sent down if it was something like a pizza or a cake?
Yes, it came down in these pressurized pots. It was an airtight cylinder that released pressure, and then the Navy divers would come down and bring us a pot. We got deliveries of pots with, like, towels or research equipment almost every day. And one time a pizza was in one. We were so happy.
Oh, do we have a question from the back? Are you going to come on up? All right, Hayden's coming up for a question. Okay. Yeah. All right. Here you go, bud.
When was your first time swimming in the ocean?
My first time swimming in the ocean? I think it was, well, I used to swim in the lake, the Great Lake up in Michigan, with my family in the summer. I think that was my first ocean experience. And then or in Florida. My grandma lived in Florida for a bit, and she would take us to the beach and swim.
Okay, so sorry, Grace, we disconnected just a little bit there. So you think of the first time as when you were living in Florida, visiting the beach?
Yeah, in Florida with my grandma, or it was in Michigan in the Great Lakes with my family up there.
Okay, just swinging. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
Yeah, just swinging back to the food for a second. During Mission 31, my class was able to connect with Fabian on day 13, so probably the day before you came down. And I can just remember they asked that same food question, and I think he was at the point where he's getting a little tired of the freeze-dried food because he didn't speak too highly of it. I think he was looking forward to getting something a little more interesting from the top side.
I mean, Fabian has very like good taste in food. You know, he's French. He enjoys like wine and cheese, and so I think it was tough. I feel like I was almost in a better situation because I just graduated from college. I was just eating like microwave foods anyways. But another thing was that smell. So the air inside the habitat is pressurized, so it would be like 2.5, 3 atmospheres of pressure, and so that means smells were 2.5, 3 times as potent. So we didn't really want any smelly foods either, because the whole habitat would really, really reek of it.
All right, maybe we'll sneak in 1 or 2 more questions. Mackenzie, do you want to come and ask a question?
Sure. Was it loud in the habitat that you were living in?
Was it loud? Yes, it was loud. We hear popping shrimp on the roof of the habitat. So when I'm sleeping, I always hear like pop sounds. And then there's the systems that bring in air and electricity. Those can generate some noise. Definitely pretty noisy.
Thank you.
Okay, and our last question, I think this will be a pretty good one to end off at, because I hope there's lots of students thinking about this question.
How could a student follow your career?
Say that again?
Say it again.
How could a student follow your career?
Oh, how could a student follow my career? My advice would be to do well in your classes. I don't think there's really a secret to doing well in school except for doing your homework and studying for tests and like, yeah, paying attention in class and to your notes. I had a really strong background in math and physics before I went to university, just because I did well in my classes, and that gave me a really solid foundation for then doing other research projects. That would be my advice for now.
And I would add to that, start scuba diving. So everybody out there,
Scuba dive if you can.
as soon as you can, get your certifications. Well, Grace, thank you so much. That was awesome today. A great presentation and great questions from our classes, great questions from the students. I don't know if you want to say something in closing, but then after that, I'll turn the microphones back on. Everybody can kind of wave and say thank you, and we'll end the broadcast there. It's a pretty good one.
I just have to thank you all for your time, and I'm also happy to answer questions outside. Like Joe has my contact, and I'm on and all those things. So yeah, I'm not a stranger to all if you have any questions or anything.
Okay, well, thanks again, and let's get those microphones turned on. If everyone wants to say thank you, great.
Thank you.
All right. Well, great. So you have a great afternoon, or I guess evening's coming closer now, and I look forward to connecting again soon. And
Great, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks for everybody who viewed and took part in this session today. It's going to YouTube, so it can be watched at any time. So thanks again, and we're signing out. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.